Oh my goodness. That's crazy. Oh, holy. Bring up the big dog. Oh. So next thing I gotta take off, I gotta take this brake caliper off. There's just two bolts, one there at the bottom and one up here at the top. So now we got all our bolts out. We got our brakes unhooked. We got the two bottom bolts and the one top for the A-arms. Now we'll take this hub nut off. On there, so we'll have to straighten that out, pull it out, and take that off. You can take this hub nut off before you take all those bolts off. It doesn't really matter. Before you take brakes or anything off, you can take this hub nut off first if you like. How's that? Inch and 3/16. Oh. Oh man, that's tight. Ah. So these here are like little spacers, little shims that go in where those bolts fasten onto your A-frame. That's all they are, just to keep the bushings tight. Keep the bolts in just for support. I don't have an air gun big enough to take that off. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. Oh, holy. Definitely going to get some never sees on that again when we put that back together. Woo! Don't think I hurt them threads, but it was some tight. A little bit of burn on the threads. Doesn't look very good. Hopefully we get her back on. Should be okay. These rubber boots, while you got your tire and stuff off, make sure there's no cuts, tears in them. So it keeps your grease inside your axle. So if you have a cut or a tear in them, you're going to get water and mud inside them, and it'll eventually tear your axle out. It'll wear the inside of your axle joints. Don't see no cuts. pretty good. So that's all there is to taking those off, guys. As you can see, this is our bearing in here. You can see that's got, you can hear that slop in there. It's got a fair bit of play in it. Now this one, the right side rear, you can see how that came apart. It was in pretty rough shape. You know, as soon as I took this piece off, all these balls fell out. So it was past the point. It was pretty rough shape. Now if I'd have not noticed this, and that's why it's very important to do your checks, like jack your bike up and give your tire a shake to see if there's any play in it. Grab the bottom of the tire and the top of the tire and wiggle it after you jack it up off the ground, and if there's any play, you want to get these changed right away, because if I'd have kept running this bike, it would eventually, the axle would have wore into this piece, and I would have had to buy a whole new spindle, which is probably costly, and it probably would have damaged the axle too, so I might have had to buy a new axle for it. So normally, so you see a lot of guys, they'll put these in a vise and they'll get a socket and they'll beat these out with a hammer. There is a snap ring inside these. I can see it here. Yeah, you can see the snap ring right there. There's the gap for the snap ring. So you take that snap ring off, and then I believe they come out this side, so you tip it upside down and get a socket this size here and beat on it. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't want to beat on it. I don't have a press. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go out and spend $1,000 on a 20-ton press just to do these bearings. So I think I'll take these to the shop, to the machine shop. So we just got back from the shop. We got our bearings all pressed in. They got the old races pressed out. Got our clips back in, lock and clip. I went with the original OEM bearing from Can-Am. You can get cheaper bearings off Amazon, but the reviews weren't that great, and I know these bearings are good because they were in the bike before and they got 19,000 miles on them, believe it or not. So these are a good bearing. For $60 a piece, it's not a bad price really. I also bought this off Amazon. This is for greasing the bearings, the inside of the bearing. I've already done this one. You can see how the grease worked its way around the outside. And I'll just show you how this works, and I'll leave a link in the description for this. It was only about $15 for this part, and you just insert it in here. It's got rubber gaskets, so it kind of fits in the groove of that inner race in the bearing. Push it in all the way. And you'll just pump the grease until you see it coming out around the outsides of the bearing. Just like so. So that's just going to give it a little extra protection for wear. You can see how that grease worked its way around all in through there. So yeah, that's a great part for $15. All right, let's get these put on. Grease her up. Whatever. So in the beginning, when I was taking this all apart, the light wasn't very good in the video and it was hard to see, so I apologize for that. But I'm just gonna do a recap here and point out the bolts that have to be taken off in order to get this assembly apart. So this was my first time doing the bearings on this bike since I've owned it, and you don't have to follow the same order that I did in this video. If I was to do this job over, I would probably take the tire off, and then I would take this axle nut off, and then I would take the brake caliper off, and then my A-frame bolts, I would take them out. That would probably be the best way, because I found once I took the brake caliper off and then I took these A-frame bolts off, there was no support for the strain I was putting on this axle. That's why you see me, I had to put a bolt back in the A-frame to give it some support. So, all right, so in order to take this apart, once you get the tire off, you have two bolts on this brake caliper. There's one right here at the top, right there, and then there is one at the bottom, right here. And then your whole caliper comes off. You can inspect your brake pads once you get that off, and you can tell if you need new brakes. But this brake line stays attached, so I just take this whole assembly once I get those two bolts out, and I set it up on top of here out of the way, and I'll put a tie strap on it just to keep it up there. After that, you have this top A-frame, just this one bolt going through here. Hopefully you can see that. And then you have the bottom two A-frames with a bolt there and a nut on the back side. And then the same thing on this side, a bolt with a nut on the back side. And that's it. Once you get those bolts out, get your axle nut off, the whole thing will slide right out for you. You know, you take your brake caliper off, and this spacer, everything comes off, and then your spindle, and then you're just left with the axle. I did notice after I put the tire back on and did this job, I did notice that there still was a little bit of play when I wiggled the tire. And what it is these bushings right here. Each one has a grease fitting on them, which I greased. There's one on each side at the top, one on each side at the bottom. I gotta grease that one. Notice I haven't greased that yet. And then there's also some at the bottom here, right there. And one on this side, and they each have grease fitting on them, and they have rubber bushings inside. The bolt goes through a rubber bushing, and when that rubber bushing starts to wear, you'll get play in the A-arms, and that's where I'm getting a lot of the wobble on the tire. But at least now I know I'm not going to ruin my axle or my spindle. The bearings are good, so I'm sure they're not too expensive, those rubber bushings. And I don't think they're that big of a job. Once you get the tire off, you just take your bolts out, pop your old bushing out, push the new one in, put it back together. So that'll be on another video. As far as the torque spec, I know I mentioned in the video to call the dealer and find out for sure, because I think every bike is different. There's quite a bit of discrepancy online about torque specs with these bikes. Some say 150, some say 160, 166. So I think what I'll do, I'll just grab the torque wrench and I'll put them at 150 and leave them there until I find out different. So the reason I couldn't torque them before is because my torque wrench is only a 1/2 inch drive. So I went and got this. I picked up a 1/2 inch drive to a 3/4 drive, because I didn't have any sockets big enough to fit that nut. So now I'll be able to torque it. So we'll just go to 150. I got the other side all torqued. I just wanted to show you guys how I was able to torque the nut with that new tool I got. This was definitely not a how-to video, guys. It's just with today's economy, I tried to tackle this myself just to save some money rather than take it to the shop. And I'm sure there's easier ways to do the job than what I did it on this video, but it worked for me, so hope you got a few things out of it. All right, thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.